Multi-step story problems. Your learning target today is I can practice two-step story problems by adding and subtracting. And you'll know you're successful today when you can sketch out your problem and work it out by using numbers to show step 1 and step 2. We have a couple of vocabulary words that we will need to know today. So first is word problem. A word problem is a math problem with a story that will ask us to find a total. So word problems are the same as story problems. So sometimes you might hear me say those interchangeably, which means sometimes I will say word problem, sometimes I will say story problem, but they mean the same thing. It's a math problem with a story. Our next vocabulary word is statement. And a statement is our final answer with a label. So that means after my final answer with a number, I'm going to have a label after it. Today, our labels will be pencils and box tops. That means I'm going to find out how many pencils are left in the problem today and how many box tops are left. That will be our statement, the number with the label. Do this word problem together. So this problem, Chris was bringing 738 box tops to school. On the way to school, he lost 63 of them. Gabe brought in 41 box tops. How many box tops were brought to school that day? So with this kind of problem, we have to take into account that Chris originally brought in 738 to school, but he lost 63 of them on the way. So for step 1, what do you think we'll have to do with 738 and 63? Since he lost those, we're going to subtract that number. But then Gabe brought in 41. So what do you think we'll have to do for our second step? We'll have to subtract for step 1, and for step 2, add. So for this kind of word problem, which is the same exact thing as a story problem, we have to do 2 steps. Step 1, subtract. Step 2, add. So let's do that right now. First, I'm going to sketch out my picture, and I will do that right now, and then I'm going to do my work with my numbers. And then the last part will be the number sentence with the answer, which is the same as our statement. That means that that's our final statement with our answer. So I'm going to draw my picture right now, and then we'll do the other part together. First, I drew 738 box tops. So kind of like when we do our base 10 blocks, this represents our hundreds, right? So 700, since there's 7, 38. But remember, he lost 63 of them. So I'm going to have to do some regrouping and change out one of my hundreds into some more tens so that I can take away 63. Right now I can take away 33, or I could take away 38 because there are 8 ones, but I can't take away 63. So I have to change out my picture just a little bit, regroup one of my hundreds into 10 tens, and then I can take away 63. So I'm going to do that right now. So if you notice, I crossed off one of my hundreds and I made it into 10 tens right there. So now I can take away 63 for step 1. So I should have 738 because that's how many box tops that Chris brought to school originally, minus 63. That is step 1. So now I just have to do the algorithm. 8 minus 3, what do we get? 5. Uh-oh, and now I'm noticing a problem in the tens place. So with 8 minus 3, there was more on top, right? So there was no need to stop. But now, more on top or more on the floor? When I look at the tens place, there's more on the floor. So I got to go next door and get some more. I'm going to take a 10, or I'm going to take 1 away from the 7, right? And make it a 6. And now what does that 3 turn into? Now that I took 1 away, it's a 13 instead of a 3. So 13 minus 6. 13 minus 6. I got to think about that. 13 minus 6, if I split 6 into a 3 and a 3, 13 minus 3 is 10, and 10 minus 3 is 7. And then 6 minus nothing, or 6 minus 0 is 6. Okay, so that's step 1. Step 2, I'm going to do on the other side. Okay, and with step 2, I am going to use my number that I have so far, 675. That's how many Chris has so far, because remember he dropped those 63. So he doesn't have 738 anymore. 675. Now I have to take into account that Gabe brought in 41 box tops. If he brought those in, I have to add. So I subtracted for step 1. Remember, I add for step 2. 675 plus 41. And now all I need to do is do some addition, adding. So I'm looking at my ones place. 5 plus 1 is 6. 7 plus 4, 11. And then 1 plus 6 is 7. That's 716. So now it's my time to write my statement or my number sentence with the answer. It's the same thing. Eventually, I will have my statement. So my number sentence would be, what numbers did we originally start with? And what answer did we eventually come up with? So we started with 738. So that's going to be the first number in my number sentence. Then what did we do in step 1? We subtracted 63. What did we do in step 2? We added 41. So my number sentence is 738 minus 63 plus 41. That equaled what again? 716. Because that was our final answer in step 2. So my statement is that how many box tops were brought to school that day? My statement is 716 box tops. That is my statement because that's my answer. For us to do this problem together. So if you're in class, your teacher might want to pause after I give out the problem. And then if you're at home, you can pause after I give out the problem to try this problem out for yourself. So with this problem, this says Miss Christensen had 767 pencils. The students lost 58 pencils in the fall. The students brought her 370 pencils in January. How many pencils does she have now? Okay, so consider how many Miss Christensen started with. Consider how many students lost pencils. And consider how many pencils that were brought back to school. How many pencils does she have now? So this is a great time to pause the video. Remember to sketch out your problem. And then remember to work it out in 2 steps. What am I going to do for step 1? And what am I going to do for step 2? And last but not least, what will my number sentence with my answer be? What will my statement be? Okay, so pause the video and see if your work matches mine. First thing I did was I drew out my problem, or I sketched it. Okay, and so when I sketched out my picture, just like with base 10 blocks, I represented my hundreds by doing 700, okay, or 700s. And then I made sure that I did 767. Eventually, I had to do some regrouping because I had to make sure that I took away 58 pencils. So when I did that, I took away 50 right here, but I couldn't take away 8. I could take away 7, but I couldn't take away 8. So I had to regroup one of my last 10 into 10 ones, and then I made 10 ones, and then I could take away 8. Okay, so you see I took away 7 plus 1 more is 8, and now that's how many ones I had left. And then I had to take into account that 370 pencils were added to that. Okay, so that's my picture. Step 2 is I did the work. So with my work, step 1 right here is 767, because that's how many pencils Miss Christensen started with, remember? Minus 58, because remember, that was the next thing that happened in our word problem, is that the students lost 58. So I'm subtracting, and I got 709. So that's what you should have gotten for step 1. Step 2, I took my answer of 709, and then I added 370. Why did I do that? Because remember the third sentence in our word problem? The students brought her 370 pencils in January. So I added those two numbers together and got 1,079. That was my final answer after doing those 2 steps. So my number sentence with the answer ended up being 767, because that's the number Miss Christensen started with, minus 58, plus 370. After we did all of those in separate steps, but if you put it together, that's what it looks like. We get 1,079. So what is my statement? How many box tops did we have? 1,079 box tops. That is my statement. So remember, your learning target today is I can practice 2-step story problems by adding and subtracting. And you'll know you're successful today when you can sketch out your problem and work it out by using numbers to show step 1 and step 2.